Welcome. I'm Brittany Spear, the Director of Advancement, and I'm glad that you have taken the time out of your busy day to join our virtual town hall. In a COVID-free world, we would do this in person, but hopefully this is close enough for you all. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Carl Bloom, our head of school, to say a few words.
Thank you as well. I'm just glad that you'll be able to join us. With all the questions that were turned in, we wanted to make sure that we're responding. And so we've asked all of our leadership team to be available. We'll be working through the different questions and responding as best we can. But it is important. We do want to make sure we communicate well. And so if you find that there's a question that didn't exactly ask it the way you wanted it asked, please let us know. We will respond to that. We want to make sure that we're informing you as best we can. These are unusual days. We want to make sure that we're keeping you as informed as we possibly can as we move into the summer and thinking so seriously about next fall. So thank you for coming. Brittany.
Thank you, Dr. Carl Bloom. Thank you to all of our families who submitted questions for our event today. Our goal is to serve our families as best as we can in any situation. I hope today your questions are answered, but if not, please do not hesitate to email me and I will get the answer for you. We received several questions that were very similar, so in an effort to save some time today, we combined those questions into one. So thank you again, and let's get started. Okay, so the first question is going to be to Tara Hughes, our Director of Finance. Did the school save money with students not being on campus?
The majority of the school's costs are fixed, such as employee wages and benefits, business and property insurance, lawn care, and equipment leases. Some of our utility costs were lower since there were fewer people in the buildings, but we still must keep the buildings heated and cooled to avoid issues with humidity or plumbing.
Thank you, Tara. Our second question is for you as well. Since many second semester school trips and end of year activities did not occur, what portion of our comprehensive fee from this school year will be either refunded or rolled into the 2021 school year?
The school refunded fees for canceled overnight field trips by sending checks to each family. We are reviewing payments made for canceled overnight retreats, and we will refund those fees as well.
Okay, Tara. Also, is there a plan to refund comprehensive fees? It seems the operating costs should be covered under a discretionary fund or unexpected expenses not dependent on these fees.
Again, the school refunded canceled overnight trips. We will also evaluate canceled overnight retreats and refund those fees as well. All other expenses covered by comprehensive fees were not impacted by COVID-19. The school's discretionary funds were absorbed in day-to-day operations as we had to cancel our one major fundraising event, the Gala, which helps fill the gaps not covered by tuition and comprehensive fees.
Thank you, Tara. Also for you, Tara, considering the last 2 months of school has been online, is Epiphany looking at some level of reimbursement for the families that paid tuition in full for this school year?
Much like the families of our students, the Epiphany School was also impacted by the unpredictable nature of these events. Together, we worked tirelessly to pivot into delivering online education for our students without the ability to work in traditional classrooms. Given the short timeline and the need for an all-new method of curriculum delivery, our expenses were not reduced significantly enough to be able to provide such a discount or reimbursement. Because of this, we will not be able to reduce tuition.
Thank you, Tara. Another question for you, Tara. Can we have, or do we already have, access to Epiphany's budget for transparency purposes? As a consumer of private education, I would like to see how our money is being used, especially if the COVID-19 situation has caused a financial burden to the school.
The budget is developed and overseen by a finance committee and the school's board of trustees to ensure clarity and prudence in managing our funds. What I can share is that nearly 88% of the school's operating budget is paid by tuition and comprehensive fee revenue. Fundraising and charitable donations, including funds received from the Nicholas Sparks Foundation, make up over 9% of the operating budget. The remaining 3% is ancillary revenue from athletics, summer camp, and enrichment experiences. On the expenditure side, wage and benefits are our cost drivers, and those expenses are approximately 64% of operating expenditures. The school did not lay off or furlough any staff, nor did we reduce any employee's salary during the governor's stay-at-home orders. And as of this date, we do not foresee the need to make such adjustments due to the likelihood of being able to return to the classroom in the fall. And the elevated expenses occurred from recruiting new teachers and staff should a layoff occur. Facilities management and operations are about 17% of our operating expenditures. Roughly 80% of our expenditures are fixed, and we anticipate that overcorrection now could prove more costly in the near future than preparing for return to on-campus education in the fall.
Thank you, Tara. Appreciate that. This question is for Dr. Carlblum. Given the uncertainty of the landscape of COVID-19 going into the next school year, will Epiphany be looking at some level of continued online education? If so, will there be a reduced cost to families who chose for their students enrolled online?
What we have found, it's actually going to be more expensive to produce a socially distanced education experience for our students than when we have students in the building in terms of tuition expenses. And an online education costs at least as much as a regular in-school, in-building education. So with that in mind, we don't see a change in the tuition for the 2020-21 school year. We might be saving money in terms of comp fees, comprehensive fees. And if that's the case, we would plan on doing a refund as we have done this year.
Thank you. The next question is also for Dr. Carlblum. Is a prioritized plan going to be available for the upcoming school year prior to tuition being due? If not, are you considering moving the tuition due date until a plan is available?
We do plan on having a detailed plan of options for the fall available we're hoping June 15th, we can put this out. And we will release that plan to you, but it will be really late July before we know which of those scenarios we're going to be able to go with, because it depends on the current situation at that time. And it depends on what the governor and the president tell us we can or can't do. Because of that, we really need to maintain the same schedule for tuition payments, because whether a regular school year like what we had in February, or a socially distanced education, or an online education, we still need to be making those purchases. And to do that, we need to know who's going to be here. So we don't see that we'll be able to make any kind of a change in that. July 1st, we really need to know who will be here.
Thank you, Dr. Carlblum. The next question is also for you. If we were to take our student out of Epiphany for homeschooling purposes, would we be able to re-enroll our student once school does get back to normal without penalty and receive preference? For example, not having to pay the new family fee and enrolling as if our student never left Epiphany.
Once we have a student here, if they're out and then come back for whatever reason, we certainly would not charge any kind of a new family fee. We would be glad to have them here. But when it comes to readmission, well, then we don't know. That would depend entirely on availability of position. For example, if we do have an empty spot in the classroom because a student has withdrawn, and yet another student comes and applies for that position, we certainly want to fill that seat. So at that point, we would fill that spot. So it will be just a total a matter of availability of position.
Thank you so much. The next question is for David Wang. Is there any consideration for extension of classes through some part of the summer?
There is not. Our teachers and our students need this summer break to rest and recuperate for a fresh start this fall. They have worked tirelessly this spring, and we want to give them the well-deserved break.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. Dr. Carlbloom, this is for you. Does Epiphany need to follow what the local public schools are doing for the fall?
No, we don't. We do fall under the same guidelines if the governor or the president dictates what we can or cannot do. The advantage we have is that if the return was dependent upon social distancing, for example, we would have opportunity to do what many schools could not, because we have space, we have smaller class sizes. So we can do things that other schools can't do, which would make it more likely that in the fall we will be able to open when other schools could not. Our first priority, I hope you know this, our first priority is that we will have students back in our building in August.
Thank you so much. The next question is also for you, Dr. Carlbloom. Are there any plans to integrate the online learning avenues during Enrichment Week schedules or when school is canceled due to inclement weather days so the kids can maintain the school calendar schedule and not have to make up missed days?
We are looking at a revision of our school calendar. We wouldn't change the beginning or ending date of the school year. If we can possibly hold to that, we will. And that is our plan at this point. In terms of that Enrichment Week, we are looking at an optional way of handling that. If we can't travel this fall, we would come up with an alternative for use of those days. It would probably be more involved in professional development for our staffing. But again, this is something that we hope to let you know more about mid-June, maybe around that June 15th deadline. But again, that's for that. We won't know what the school will actually look like until probably the end of July, when the governor and the president give us more input.
This is a little bit of a similar question, Dr. Carlbloom, but what are the potential plans for the 2020-2021 school year?
I can let you know, we do have 3 different scenarios. Now, how those scenarios are going to look exactly, that's what we're working on. We have a task force right now. That task force consists of 8 different unique areas of responsibility. You can see it coming up here. How our board will be involved, advancement, technology, technology obviously being hugely important depending on where we are in the fall, but co-curricular, what can happen with that? Academics, finance, operations, wellness, a huge part of what's going to happen in the fall. Whether we're off campus or on campus, that's just monstrous. Admissions, and then legal. You know, we have to be obviously thinking about the legalities involved in a fall program. So we're developing that plan. We again hope to be able to release to you pretty strong specifics about what that will look like on June 15th. And then we'll have to just wait and see what the governor and the president dictate for us over the course of the summer.
This question is for Dr. Heather French. If we are to continue virtual schooling, will it be adapted? And if so, how?
Absolutely. I am so proud of our teachers, students, and parents for how well they all did during emergency remote learning. But please know, we know that this spring's virtual learning was truly an emergency plan. And throughout the spring, we've taken careful notes about what worked and what didn't work. And moving forward over the summer, we are going to develop a true virtual learning framework grounded in research-based best practices for distance learning. If we are required to go virtual again at some point next year, we will have a structured, solid framework that provides for consistency and clear expectations for teachers, students, and parents.
Thank you, Dr. French. The next one is for you as well. We are struggling now with pre-K 4. With both parents working full-time, it does not allow for morning Zoom school. We have to do it at night, and it is still a challenge. How will that look for the really young children?
Yeah, that is definitely a difficult situation, and we fully recognize that virtual learning is most challenging for our youngest students, and that with kindergartners, parent involvement is a must. So ideally, we will be able to be in school face-to-face. However, should the need arise to move online, our lessons will be developmentally appropriate. We'll have a balance of synchronous and asynchronous learning tasks that will allow for flexibility to accommodate parent work schedules. so that you're able to facilitate learning with your child.
How will Spanish immersion be affected for K-3?
As you all know, Spanish immersion is a hallmark of an Epiphany education. It remains a top priority in the fulfillment of our school's mission. As we develop a virtual learning framework for the future possibility of being online again at some point, we are seeking creative ways to provide as much of an immersive experience as possible. I am fully aware that the Spanish component is difficult when students cannot interact face-to-face with their Spanish teachers on a daily basis. I know this is an aspect of distance learning that needs to be improved. I feel confident that with the help of our outstanding Spanish teachers, we can develop a strong plan for maintaining the integrity of this program in a virtual environment.
Thank you. Dr. Carlbloom, this question is for you. Are there avenues for pursuing technology-issued products such as iPads congruent with public school standards if online learning is going to continue?
No, what we will do is continue to allow students to use the device that they are most comfortable with. For those students that don't have a device or don't have internet in their home, we will do as we have done these last few months. We will at that point provide a device for them, and we will provide, make sure they have internet available in their home.
Thank you. Dr. French, do you recommend any introduction for incoming kindergartners to the Spanish language that students should look at during the summer months?
No, I don't. This summer, in that regard, this summer is really no different than any other summer. We have a strong kindergarten team, and they will have a solid plan for introducing our newest Falcons to Spanish, regardless of the instructional format we start the school year in. They will communicate regularly with parents on how they can support the Spanish learning process at home once kindergarten begins.
Thank you. Mr. Wang, this question is for you. If the next school year goes back to normal, will Google Classroom be utilized in conjunction with the normal curriculum?
We have found that Google Classroom has been a valuable tool to facilitate instruction at Epiphany, particularly in the middle and upper schools. We will continue to utilize Google Classroom in the new school year, but with obvious adjustments to improve its facilitation that we've learned over the course of the spring.
Mr. Wang, this question is also for you. With the change to online learning, some teachers are posting grades on Google Classroom, which parents do not have access to at this point. As a parent of multiple children at the school, I need to be able to have access to all grades with one login for all of my children. If online learning continues, can parents be assured that this will be the case?
You know, that's an interesting question. During this time of implementation of Google Classroom for all of our middle school and upper school teachers, and I think this applies to teachers on the Henderson campus as well, we have learned that actually Rediker, which is our portal facilitator, and Google Classroom can be integrated together so that grades posted to Google Classroom will update to the Rediker platform for parents to access. Parents who use the Rediker portals will be able to see their students' grades from Google Classroom. And we'll be working with teachers this summer to make sure that those connections and integration are made.
Dr. French, what is the status, direction, and long-term solution for the Participate program and the Superior Spanish teachers?
As I mentioned earlier, Spanish immersion is a top priority at Epiphany as we strive to fulfill our mission as a school. Our Spanish teachers, whether they are hired through Participate or locally, are a blessing to our school. They all have native proficiency in Spanish and bring with them a wealth of cultural heritage to share with our students, staff, and parents, along with their language expertise. We will continue to recruit, hire, and train highly qualified Spanish teachers with a focus on native proficiency and a passion for guiding our students to become citizens. The current situation with COVID-19 has made bringing new teachers from Latin America difficult. Our intent in the years to come is to continue to recruit teachers from Latin America to join our Epiphany family as visiting teachers for as long as their visas will allow. I would like to share one silver lining to our current situation is we have recently received the news that two of our beloved Spanish teachers, Senor Farigua and Senor de Lima, will be allowed to stay for a 6th year, and we could not be more thrilled.
Thank you so much. Dr. French, this question is also for you. As far as shared items, how will going to the library, computer lab, music, art, PE, etc. be affected for students?
That's a great question. Students will continue to have these opportunities and experiences while continuing to practice safe social distancing and cleaning procedures. We're not entirely certain what that will look like. As Dr. Carblum has said, we won't know for sure until mid-July. But specials in library time will look different than they have in the past, but they will also still be an important part of the lower school experience.
Dr. French, could the leadership address the feasibility of the school leaving access open through the summer with the students' current grade level logins to as many as possible of the online learning websites we've been using during online learning?
Absolutely. Logins to web-based subscription programs have always been left open during the summer months, and this summer will be no exception. There'll be more web-based programs, but they'll all be available to you and your children throughout the summer.
Dr. French, with all the changes taking place, can we expect the same quality of education as before? So much of what makes Epiphany great is that education can be somewhat individualized according to the students' needs, as well as the small groups of students working together in small groups with the teachers.
No doubt you will be able to expect the same quality of education. As we look at different scenarios for a safe return to school, we are keeping the fundamental components of our mission at the forefront. We have established non-negotiables, including a quality education experience, and we are designing everything else around maintaining the integrity and value of an Epiphany education. In some ways, social distancing and virtual learning lend themselves to an even more individualized and personalized education.
Thank you. Will the children be able to have recess, Dr. French?
Absolutely. Movement, fresh air, and play are vital elements of a strong elementary experience. At Epiphany, we focus on the whole child. Students must have time during the day to run, play, use their imagination, and take a break from the demands of academics. Many of the expert recommendations for a safe return to school also include increased outside time. We will be looking closely at how we can incorporate recess while still keeping everyone healthy and safe.
Thank you. Mr. Wang, if we have to do virtual learning for a portion of the upcoming year, what will the teachers be preparing in advance so there is not as much downtime for the students? I have one student who spends about 6 hours a day working and one student who also spends about 2 hours a day working to complete their work.
During this summer, we'll be working with teachers at all levels to establish clear and consistent expectations for classroom learning, especially in an online environment. Additionally, we'll be making contingency plans that Dr. Carblum has referenced earlier that allow for transitions amongst the different plans from virtual learning to in-person instruction and back and forth. It is our hope that any transition to virtual learning in the upcoming school year will be seamless without any downtime for students. As for the secondary question for students who accomplish learning at different paces, we will continue to encourage those parents to email the teachers of their students directly to discuss any concerns and needs. We feel that teachers can provide or scale back on a needed basis.
Thank you. The next question is also for you, Mr. Wang. If school be in person, what measures will be taken to ensure safety?
We'll be basing our guidelines on the expectations put out by our government leaders, our state governor, the CDC, and other health organizations. Dr. Carblum has mentioned already in today's town hall meeting, but in previous communications about our school's task force that is in place to constantly review the ever-changing situation in our society. One of our major initiatives for the coming school year will be to make our campuses safe, compliant with COVID-19 guidelines for schools and groups coming together. At this point, we are looking at ways to reduce class size to meet the current guidelines of 50% capacity in classrooms. We also will be asking teachers to wear masks during the school day based on current expectations.
Mr. Wang, this question is for you. What criteria will be used to determine if a child or faculty member should be temporarily isolated or quarantined due to either exposure to a positive case or if they are exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms?
Brittany, the current CDC recommendations are the following for symptoms of COVID-19, and we will be utilizing these. And these include fever, chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea. And if students or teachers or community members exhibit those symptoms, we will follow whatever guidelines and recommendations CDC or health officials have in place.
Thank you. Mr. Wayne, the next question is also for you. What criteria must be met in order for any student or faculty member who is quarantined or contracts COVID-19 to be allowed to return to the school?
Again, health organizations like the CDC have provided us guidelines to follow, which include those individuals affected or impacted to be quarantined for 14 days. We would also require, much like any student who has been out with the flu or mono, that we would need a release note from a physician clearing the student or community member to return to school.
Thank you. If school will be attended on a staggered schedule, how will teachers protect themselves from spreading a virus to each group? This question is for you, Mr. Wayne.
As we've mentioned before, we're developing many different options for how we will provide instruction. We will not be staggering classes, so that would not be an issue that we would be facing.
What is the school going to do to ensure the healthy children and staff can attend school while the potential affected and sick stay home? Will there be a plan to isolate, test, trace ones who are suspected of being infected so all are not missing out for the few who are sick?
We have plans to provide a safe environment for our students who are here, but also for tracing and testing students who are at home, who are affected by COVID-19. We are working on all these plans and following guidelines that we provide from government agencies.
How does the school plan to screen children for potential COVID-19 symptoms, and on what frequency?
This has been a topic of discussion with our task force, and currently our plan is to screen students daily as they arrive at school with temperature checks. And we also know that our parents will be very cooperative with our new screening procedures and will be on alert for potential symptoms prior to even leaving their homes for school.
Thank you. The next question is also for you, Dr. French. Will our children be expected to wear masks all day when school goes back into session?
Lower school children, per the CDC recommendations for their young age, will not be expected to wear a mask all day. There may be situations, though, when a mask is warranted and necessary, such as a child becoming ill during the day.
Thank you. Dr. French, I have an incoming kindergartner. It is hard to require social distancing for a 5-year-old, and I imagine it'll be difficult to learn Spanish if he and his teachers are in a mask. What precautions will the school take to keep the students safe, but also be able to learn effectively?
It is definitely hard to require social distancing with our youngest students. We will be designing the school day and the schedule to meet CDC recommendations while still allowing children to be children. Regarding Spanish instruction, we are exploring options for masks with clear insets, so students are still able to see their teachers' mouths in order to learn how to properly produce Spanish sounds that are new to them. Our priority is, of course, keeping students and staff safe, yet we are also seeking to find a balance of safety precautions that minimize the disruption to learning for our young Falcons.
Thank you. Dr. French, how does the school plan to manage lunch periods and also the use of masks?
In all likelihood, students will not be gathering together in large groups for lunch. Cleaning and sanitation procedures will increase, and students will not be allowed to share food with each other. We will also ask parents to send lunches in disposable bags rather than lunch boxes to prevent the harboring of any germs that could be spread to others. And of course, they can't eat lunch in a mask, so we will put precautions in place to make sure that they are safe even if they don't have a mask on during lunchtime.
Thank you. Dr. Carlblum, this question's for you. Will Epiphany employ a school nurse for next school year?
Been looking at the last couple of years, actually, in the light of the current situation, certainly a good question for the future. I don't have an answer for you at this point, but just so you know, we're seriously considering that.
Thank you. Dr. Carlblum, this next question is also for you. If the precautions taken to avoid COVID-19 transmission in the classrooms are judged by parents to be either inadequate to keep students safe or so restrictive that they result in a severely compromised learning experience, what alternatives will be considered to make sure the right balance is struck between safety and an effective learning environment?
Good. Over the next couple months, we will be doing a tremendous amount of research and communication just to put in place the proper precautions and the proper plans for the fall. Now, once established, they will be communicated to all of our families and then fully enforced. Our families need to know the safety precautions that we will have in place for their children. And to alter those precautions or plans for an individual student wouldn't be appropriate.
Thank you. Dr. Carblum, this next question is for you as well. My kids are going to camp in June with extra measures in place. So my question is, can we not sign a waiver from the school so it takes all liability away from the school?
That's going to be a good question for our school lawyers. Oftentimes, as you know, a written document is just a piece of paper when it ends up in the courtroom. And so we will need to make sure that all of our legal bases are appropriately covered. And we will go with that for how we set up the next year.
This question is for our new Director of Admissions, Tahira Copeland. How will we welcome new students to Epiphany if online?
Our goal is for newly enrolled students to have live interactions with each other, current students and their teachers. We will be prepared to offer grade level online gatherings for our new Epiphany Falcons. Kindergartners will enjoy virtual show and tells with their new teachers and classmates. First through fifth grades will participate in Zoom games with a mix of new and current students and teachers. Our middle and upper school students will engage in online activities and Q&As facilitated by our student ambassadors. The orientation dinner for new families will be separated by division, lower, middle, and upper schools, to reduce the group size, and will take place outdoors instead of indoors if outdoor gatherings are an option. We look forward to welcoming new families to our community and are prepared to do so regardless of any restrictions that might be in place.
How will we keep current students connected to classmates?
We absolutely want all of our students to stay connected, to feel connected. We know they're going into classrooms with new teachers who they haven't had a chance to build a relationship with. But we want everybody at Epiphany, both current students and new students, to feel like they are a part of our Epiphany community. Hopefully, we'll be able to start the year face-to-face and build those relationships early in the year. If not, though, please be assured that, much like Ms. Copeland just mentioned, we will have intentional, structured plans in place to ensure all students have the opportunity to get to know their classmates, to connect with their teachers, and to feel like they are an important part of their school community.
Dr. French, this is a uniform question. So are specific uniform requirements, and where can I receive that information?
The uniform requirements for next school year, for the 2020-2021 school year, will remain the same, and that information can be found under quick links on our website.
Dr. French, please elaborate on after-school programs, daily schedules, and information about drop-off for the first day of school in August.
We are still working out the details for all of these, as many people have mentioned, and we won't know for sure until we make a decision about how we're beginning our school year. But as soon as the information is finalized, it will be emailed out to all of our families.
This question is for Sandy Haddock. Is the administration considering other options for the 9th grade international trip?
Thank you, Brittany. While we're still hopeful that the Costa Rica program will be a safe and viable option by the end of February, we are also preparing plans for both an alternative location and for a later travel date. Families will receive additional information and updates as we return to school in the fall.
Thank you, Sandy. First and foremost, we want to thank you for joining us today and watching our virtual town hall. Keep in mind that if you feel like your question was not answered or that you have additional questions, please feel free at any time to reach out and email me at bspear@epiphany-globalschool.org, or you can email anyone on our leadership team by going to our website and finding key administrators under About Epiphany and finding their emails there. We are so excited and hopeful to be back on campus in August, and we cannot wait to see all of our Falcons. We miss you all very much, and thanks again for joining us.